Greetings, all, and welcome to the 33rd episode of the V.T.P, or the Veteran Trainer's Perspective. Today, we will be examining a fundamental aspect of how the world of Pokémon functions compared to the rest of the world around us, and in turn, how it reflects the world that we are a part of. Today, we will be peering into the deeper reaches of technological disparity in the Pokémon world, and seeing how it compares to our own world, and the way that it is structured and ultimately functions as part of the world that we are so familiar with.
It is first important to note that, when we are talking about technological disparity, what this means is simple. The differences in technology between the world of Pokémon and the real world, despite seemingly existing in a similar state of overall social and historical development. It goes without saying that the world of Pokémon is often a technological marvel, and the way it brings not just the creatures that are part of it to life, but the way that humans have come to interact with it all as well. And I personally see it as a pseudo-utopia of sorts, where technology has managed to eliminate quite a bit of the darker aspects of our own world. At the same time, it is quite evident that the world is not perfect, far from it, and that many similar issues that arise in our world with technology can also be found in this world, and sometimes there might even be an uneven balance between the two that can result in some drastic changes to how the world operates on a daily basis. Where do we lie in comparing our own technology to that in the world of Pokémon? Are we really behind this world in every sense, or are we keeping pace, and have we even gone beyond the world in some respects? That is the question of this analysis, as we take a look and see just how different and unique these two worlds are in regards to their technology, and how it has impacted the way that we regularly interact with technology, and even take it for granted.
In saying this, however, it must be stated that the biggest, most likely reason for a lot of these technological disparities is a pretty simple yet complex issue. It's likely because of Pokémon.
Though it might be a bit of a retrofit for some, the way that the world of Pokémon operates in many instances is not that different from the lives of the Flintstones, a popular cartoon from decades prior that has managed to maintain some serious staying power even in modern media. I make this connection because Pokémon have come to substitute many of the basic appliances and services that technology would otherwise cover in our world, or is just straight up manpower at its most basic level, both in ancient and more modern times. We see these creatures all around us as part of our daily lives and take them for granted in our adventures. But the truth of the matter is that technology in that world is built around Pokémon, not just for or with them. The basis for much of the advanced technology in the Pokémon world is made as a direct connection to these creatures, and in turn reflects how humanity and Pokémon have come to work together within it all. As such, we will see that the existence of these creatures has proven to be the ultimate catalyst in understanding the technological disparities that exist between our world and the world where these fantastic creatures dwell. The history of capture balls in the world of Pokémon is one whose length is still unknown to modern historians, but it can easily be assumed that it has been around for a great deal of time, as the ancient remnants of capture ball technology can be found in ruins dating back tens of thousands of years, and are often depicted in murals found amongst dry desert areas, effectively cementing their existence among humans all the way back to when humans may have first began domesticating wild animals and plants for sedentary life. The capture devices that people are familiar with today take the basic attributes of the most ancient models possessed and add on the features found in apricorn balls, which are generally thought to be the true ancestor of the modern capture device, alongside antique models designed by the Galaxy team of the Hisui region when said team first arrived on the island. The secret behind how capture balls actually work is still one that only a few people in the world truly know, and is something that even most researchers do not understand, including us in making commentary here on the devices. Considering how much work goes into producing even the flimsiest of models though, this makes at least some sense. The standard capture ball as they exist in this series seems to utilize a unique form of matter conversion that uses a powerful electromagnetic field to supplement an internal mechanism that temporarily converts matter into energy and simultaneously uses two separate detectors on the inside to measure both the position and velocity of every single particle in an object's body as a way for adjusting for the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. This is only speculation, however, as the true design plans for capture balls are kept locked up and away from all but a handful of people across the planet. Regardless, this mechanism allows a capture ball to effectively contain and release a Pokémon with little trouble based on the physical form immediately at the point of capture. Once a successful capture has been initiated, the capture ball will permanently record the information it has on the species and will use that data to constantly check to make sure that it is always being pointed at the right Pokémon when calling it back from battle. The interior of a capture device is designed to keep the Pokémon inside happy by making it comfortable. What this actually means, however, is a trade secret, but it obviously seems to create an environment friendly enough to keep the captured Pokémon from leaving.
As one might expect, this is the single biggest example of technology in the Pokemon world far surpassing that of the real world, to the point where this sort of technology has been around since ancient times, and how this is even possible is so fantastical that it must honestly be seen as just that, a fantasy.
The entire point of these devices is the capacity to freely convert matter and energy between one another, and that is something that can only be achieved on a global scale by humans in the heart of a nuclear reactor for the most part. The sheer amount of energy involved in this process in the real world is so immense that to think of it being possible in devices that can be fit in one's hand, let alone be used safely in any capacity, is simply not possible with our current technology. As such, suspension of disbelief is all but necessary in this case, and makes capture devices the single most advanced piece of tech in the Pokemon world that we simply can't begin to approach yet.
TMs, TRs, and HMs are an integral part of the world that trainers occupy in the modern day, and have done much in making most battles more interesting than normal by making it possible for Pokemon to learn many new moves aside from the ones they normally acquire as they age and evolve.
TMs and HMs were originally just another way for Silph Co. to make a lot of money, but today they have proven to be an important tool for both trainers and ordinary citizens looking to make their way through the world. TMs, or technical machines, were the first to be produced by Silph Co. and stayed much as they originally were up until the latest generation of TMs. A TM looks like just another CD with little in the way of distinguishing features, but they are more than simple discs to those who know how to use them. In the original model, a TM was a CD encoded with two distinct types of data embedded in its surface. On the one hand, the device is programmed with digital data taken from computer simulations of a specific move, with all of the technical data and description of the move reduced to a basic program that was then installed manually into a capture device by holding the disc near the capture sensor at the front of the device. After a few moments of being held in front of it, a capture device would automatically enter a standby mode and scan the data in the disc, completing the procedure after only a few seconds. The data was then manually transferred to the encapsulated Pokemon, like downloading a computer file, visually ingraining the move's mechanics into their brains electrochemically, and thus giving them the knowledge about how to use the given move in question. After this, the captured Pokemon was to be released and fed the TM disc like food. The device was biodegradable and designed to contain not only data, but a unique mix of chemical compounds and stimuli designed to slowly change the anatomy of a target so as to enable them to actually learn the move aside to the TM in question. The exact mechanics of this process are still a secret hotly guarded by Silph Co., but in a sense this dual system will give a Pokemon knowledge of a move, and additionally the chemical compounds and structures in the body needed to facilitate the growth of a small organ or massive tissue capable of actually allowing them to use the move, effectively teaching the move to them at no physical or biological cost.
As part of the 5th generation line of TMs, however, this was no longer the case as advances in technology have made it possible for TMs to integrate the functions of HMs into the systems with little trouble, allowing them to be used indefinitely without ever breaking, which eventually led to the creation of TRs to take on that sort of expendable place, before they went back to the old models and simply made it possible for trainers to make their own TMs if given the right materials.
HMs, or hidden machines, were much more complicated than their counterparts and much more difficult to work with, let alone find, due to their unique attributes. While TMs were quite useful to the average trainer, some exotic and oftentimes artificial moves that focused less on battle potential and more on practical functions, such as the cut attack to help chop lumber or the surf attack used to cross large bodies of water, seemed of little use to most people and were not considered to be diverse enough to be TM worthy. Instead, Silph Co released these exotic moves in the form of an HM, a rare device that was much more direct in its operations and in turn much more difficult to work around. While HMs have the same functions as TMs in how they teach Pokemon, they are completely digital and often encapsulated within blocky interface devices in order to differentiate them from the cheaper counterparts. These objects will teach Pokemon a special move completely through contact with their capture device alone, and in turn will force their bodies to learn the move without allowing them to naturally adjust the encoded information in a more natural biological fashion. This makes HMs much more difficult for trainers to use properly, but they can nonetheless be extremely useful when exploring the wilderness, as cutting down a tree blocking a path or moving large boulders can open up many different avenues of exploration that are otherwise impossible for normal trainers to access. Needless to say, this is a grand example of technology and organic matter coming together in a rather unique way in order to benefit the organic side of the equation. And while this sort of technology might seem far-fetched, the truth is that it might not totally be outside of our reach at the moment. While the data aspect of this transformation is something that we have yet to begin to even touch, the integration of technology into organic matter is something that has already been done with animals and even humans in rare cases, and is on a pathway that is likely to only further this path. However, at the same time, it's interesting to note that this is also where the world of Pokémon actually falters just a tad. As well as this sort of technology has been applied to Pokémon, humans have mostly been kept out of the loop in the Pokémon world for the most part on this. Only in the real world have humans been the main focus of technological fusion, or cyborg creation, however you want to put it, and as a result, the applications of this technology do differ a bit. While this doesn't mean that our world is necessarily more advanced in that regard, it does show that the uses for that technology are different because of the intended recipient of their benefits, and shows how the two worlds have diverged along this sort of technological pathway.
While battling is oftentimes looked at with great vigor from trainers and non-trainers alike, the one side that most humans don't always give much thought to is the recovery aspect of any battle.
When Pokémon are hurt, their wounds can range from slight scratches to massive gouges that may or may not be life-threatening. While Pokémon centers can heal the trainer's Pokémon for free without much issue, when out in the field, Pokémon centers are rarely as plentiful as many would like, calling for a different solution altogether. Likewise, the statistical abilities of Pokémon and their performance in combat can sometimes depend upon artificial medication and vitamins designed to bolster their natural strengths and make them all that they can possibly be. The items that make all of these things possible might not seem very important or even related when alone, but together they make up a core network that helps to support battling in all forms and in turn makes possible the art of professional combat without raising the ire of those who might otherwise be against the practice entirely. This is yet another area where the realm of fantasy has mostly been in the real world, and in 3 different areas. Healing items in general are meant to help a Pokémon recover the energy very quickly, but in the real world, even the strongest of medicine takes time to take effect, and isn't really a quick fix in any respect as a result. Moreover, Pokémon that take extensive damage can be healed with normal items that we might partake in, like water and soda, but much more common are healing sprays that can seemingly heal a creature they're used on in an instant, no matter how badly injured they might otherwise be. They can even be used to fully revive a Pokémon to full health, although items like Revives and Max Revives seem to look more like solid pills and candies in form, but the point is the same in that their effects are instantaneous and extensive in a lot of cases. The ability to apply medicine directly to a damaged piece of flesh or anything else might not be out of the question, as there are types of plants and the like that can deliver medicine in such a fashion, but the instantaneous effects are a bit much for modern iterations, and thus have their flaws and differences to be sure. At the same time, there are also vitamins to be considered, like protein and iron, and these items not only share the trouble of having instantaneous effects that are beyond the norm in all contexts, but at the same time have the effect of making those they apply to stronger right out of the gate, and that's simply not how modern medicine works in this instance. Again, time is the issue, as while these sorts of effects can happen, they are far from instantaneous. Moreover, the fact that they also seem to stop working over time doesn't make a lot of sense in the context of modern medicine, and it's likely little more than a reflection of the way the games function. However, that is not to say that all types of medicine and healing items share a level of technological disparity to them, as the battle items that can be used to enhance the stat of a single Pokémon in battle are not that entirely far off from the real world. While they might not exactly have the same direct effects in a normal situation, there are real-world medications that are designed to quickly bolster some aspect of the human body when applied, adrenaline being a common example. These items help to enhance the way that the body functions in some manner or another, and their effects can actually be quite rapid, and oftentimes need to be so in order to keep someone under control and keep their body working to the degree needed for a given situation. As such, this is the one area where the technological disparity between our world and the world of Pokémon is much less so than normal, and shows a lovely note of realism in this application.
In talking about the technological disparities between reality and the world of Pokémon, as hinted at already, there is a lot of technology that is designed specifically around use for Pokémon and them alone.
Items like repels, for example, have little use outside the wild, as they are meant to create an aroma that helps to keep wild Pokémon away from whoever used the item, while there are items that do the very opposite, and others that might be designed to trap Pokémon or amplify the way they can perform in battle, such as withheld items like binding bands, expert belts, a flame orb, and so on. It is obvious to say that these devices really do not have a direct technological equivalent because, well, there really aren't any Pokémon in the real world, so the usefulness wouldn't exactly be there to talk about. However, what is interesting to note is that there are similarities in terms of the base concept of these devices. Sure, we might not exactly have access to repels like in the Pokémon world, but we do have items like bear spray and insect repellent that are tailored to deal with creatures other than just humans, and this helps to make the life of people out in the world a little easier to deal with. We've got technology designed to help with keeping populations of other creatures under control, trapping them, protecting them. In concept, we do have a lot of the items that are meant to help both humans and wildlife perform better as a species in surviving, so there is at least a bridge there to speak of between reality and fantasy.
Transportation is an aspect of technology that both shows similarity in the real world and disparity at the same time, but not in a way that necessarily creates problems between the two worlds in question here.
On the one hand, the world of Pokémon as transportation technology isn't actually that far off from what we have in the real world. Both worlds have access to vehicles like cars, trains, planes, and so on, where the technology seems to be pretty much the same on both sides. This is rather interesting to me because, compared to what we've talked about thus far, you would actually expect there to be many more advances in this field. At the very least, I had hoped for flying cars, but those aren't really a thing in the Pokémon world. And it's a bit baffling. There are devices that can convert freely between matter and energy, and yet basic vehicles seem to still be an active part of the Pokémon world. We have technology that technically powers the sun, and yet the world of Pokémon is still fighting with issues of renewable energy and the like, not to mention basic electricity. This presents a strange disparity in technology within the Pokémon world itself, and it's not the only example that we will see with it all. Needless to say, this further makes the point that a lot of the more advanced technology of the Pokémon world is created and based solely around Pokémon, with everything else seeming to be much closer to how the real world operates. This is further noted when it comes to singular transportation, as while there are items like bikes and rollerblades that can help normal people get around easily, Pokémon themselves can also be used for the sake of transportation across vast distances, and this is shown especially in places like the Galar and Paldea regions, where travel around the region is easily made possible through the use of Pokémon for direct flights. This even applies to anyone that has access to the fly attack on either a Pokémon in their team or from a wild specimen lending a hand, so to speak, and I find this to be rather amusing. On the one hand, this is a very low-tech approach to all of this, and yet at the same time it makes sense for this all to be here for individuals to adventure out on their own, and I firmly believe that is also a core component of all of this, the adventure of the individual. In the real world, if you want to cross a vast distance in a short amount of time, you really have no choice but to rely on some sort of paid transportation to get there, like a motor vehicle. But this low-tech approach makes it easier for individuals to go out on adventures of their own to explore the world in a short amount of time. There is likely plenty of commentary to be had on the social implications of this, but for now it's easy to say that this too is curated around the adventure of seeing the world with Pokémon by one side, wild or not.
It is hard to imagine what the world would be like today without the PC storage system, but for all the glory and ease it has brought into lives of trainers, very few seem to really know the history behind it and why it has made such an improvement to society.
When capture balls were first constructed, they served their purpose well in allowing humans to capture, train, and create relationships with wild Pokémon and use them for day-to-day activities and tasks. If, however, a trainer wanted to use a Pokémon anywhere, they always had to make sure that they brought that specific Pokémon with them wherever they went. This quickly proved to be an issue when taking long journeys, as it limited trainers to the type of Pokémon they could have with them, and if they wanted to bring many with them, they also had to carry them by hand or through some other expensive form of transportation. In the advent of the computer age, it was made the target of the best programmers in the world to make a system that would eliminate these issues and make the transportation and usage of Pokémon simple and easy for even the poorest of trainers to do so. And at the advent of this period, the Pokemaniac Bill came along and developed the first ever storage system, and the rest, as they say, is history. The exact way in which the PC storage system operates mechanically is a closely guarded secret, but in short is the ultimate way of storing and retrieving Pokémon of all types over vast distances without having to always carry them with you. In the PC storage system, each trainer has a multi-purpose file created for them on the system the moment they have obtained the registered trainer ID code. When accessed, a trainer can deposit a Pokémon in the system by placing the capture ball in question within a specially designed acceptance unit that, after grabbing a hold of the device, uses advanced programming modules to convert the physical object and the Pokémon inside of it into digital data, which is then sent to the Pokémon professor the trainer first registered under. Alongside the research, it is the professor's duty to secure all captured Pokémon in specially designed warehouses that are digitally connected with the PC system's mainframe. After initially being put into storage, a trainer can access the storage space at any time on a PC and select a Pokémon to take out for use. This sends the signal to the device stored in the warehouse, where it is instantly digitized and sent to the trainer upon request. This system, as one might imagine, has made the transportation and storage of capture balls so easy and efficient that pretty much anyone can do it, and there are almost no major limitations to worry about. Once again, this is a technological disparity that is a direct product of the existence of Pokémon in this world, the PC storage system going beyond the far basic functions of many machines today, in that it allows for living creatures to be readily converted into data that can then be stored, and this seems like quite the leap for the lot. Or is it? Truth be told, this might not be all that far off from the future of the real world. The funny thing about this is that it isn't technically taking living creatures and putting them into a machine, as inside their own capture device, they're actually just energy, and can be digitized with little issue at the rate that human technology is advancing in the real world. The devices themselves are the major hurdle, but the PC storage system isn't totally out of the realm of possibility for the future. The sheer size of the entire worldwide system is a bit of a setback in terms of likelihood, but I don't feel like it's something that is more than a lifetime away for most. Though the fact that they also managed to create Pokémon like Porygon as living holograms of a sort does show that some aspects of this are a far cry from what the real world has to offer at the moment.
Now, this is all fine and well, you might be saying, but a lot of these entries are connected more directly to the use of Pokémon by trainers than those that otherwise interact with Pokémon on a regular basis. What about the average person?
Well, don't worry, because just like in the Flintstones, it has been seen that a lot of household appliances that are similar to what we have in the real world are present, but many are also powered by Pokémon to some extent or another. Probably the biggest and most obvious example of this are Rotom, which have been used to power a wide variety of specialty appliances in more recent years in order to make for cheaper and more efficient devices for the average consumer to take part in. This has even led to some materials like firefighting equipment to be all but rendered obsolete, as water-type Pokémon can do the job just as well with little issue, and other creatures like Heliolisk and Ampharos make perfect substitutes for light sources and lighthouses, just as a few examples. Something similar could be said about the use of Growlithe and other Pokémon as part of police forces in cases where humans alone aren't enough to get the job done, and the integration of it all seems to have been done rather smoothly as a result. However, I will note that there might be a bit of a technological shift on the horizon for all of this, as the most recent generations of games have also indicated that Pokémon-fueled technology might be on the decline. It has been noted that in Generation 9, the devices that used to be powered by Rotom as a quick and efficient way of making technology more efficient to work with are actually on the decline in production and are being replaced with devices that are much similar, if not identical, to what exists here in the real world. It's not really explained why this is the case, but it is possible that it could have something to do with reliability and human-Pokémon relationships. A simple washing machine is really just that, a washing machine, a device powered by electricity that does whatever is needed of it without any care about how it is treated. With a similar device powered by a Rotom, however, you also have to be wary of how exactly you treat the Pokémon that is powering said devices, and if they are not treated well, it can result in both minor and major disasters depending upon the devices they are powering. This goes right back to Pokémon use for other professions, and to make a parallel, it's not that different from what the real world is going through at the moment with technology and workers in general. Technology is advancing to the point where a lot of tasks and jobs used to be filled by humans are now on the brink of getting replaced by machines that can do the jobs more efficiently and at a cheaper cost than human labor. We share that situation quite strongly in that respect, and given that the real world is already looking to be on the verge of a crisis where there simply won't be much work to go around, it is possible that the world of Pokémon might be on a similar path for the future.
All around our world, we see that advertisements will sell out and target just about any and all groups of people that one can imagine in order to get people to buy products, otherwise invest that time and energy into something that might not be necessary for survival. And it's something that has been going on for centuries, even if it's only truly ramped up to what we are currently familiar with within the last century or so.
Food, movies, games, toys, and the like, all is seen in the eyes of many before they can eventually be acquired by those willing to put their money to work to get someone the latest doodad or experience in life. One then has to ask if this is also the same in the world of Pokémon, as while it might not seem like a major factor to most, advertisements are essential to the way that the global economy works at both the large and small scales. After all, you can't make a national brand of some sort if you don't put in the money to get the look and features of your product out there to the general public. And here we can honestly see that, indeed, the world of Pokémon isn't that different whatsoever, even if the way that these products are advertised might differ a little. We can see that media like TV and movies are a very popular aspect of this world, and Pokestar Studios in particular from the Unova region shows this immensely. The difference here though is that, while animals in the real world might be a common feature to some, Pokémon seem to get a lot more of the spotlight in their respective world, even if the technology might otherwise not be all that different. This draws back once again to how they are often the focal point for much of the technology in the world, and makes perfect sense that they would be used as mascots or just parts in the scene that then goes on to help entice and excite those that are willing to put the hard-earned cash to work to get the consumer exactly what they want. As such, it's easy to say that the two, at least on a technological standpoint, aren't all that different, and thus share a point of commonality with each other.
War is where things are likely to take a bit of a dark turn, so let's get to it and try to tackle this particular aspect of reality as delicately as possible.
War is sadly inevitable in modern society, no matter how much we would like the world to be able to keep things peaceful, and the way that it is handled is both an easy and difficult thing to measure between the Pokémon world and the real world. On the one hand, it's explicitly mentioned in the early stages of the franchise that Pokémon have been used in war times before, and this does make plenty of logical sense. Given that they often display fantastical powers that humans are not capable of matching, having them as weapons of war just makes sense on that note. At the same time, however, what we really don't see is specifically how they're often used in times of war, especially in modern times. I suppose that at the very least, it could be said that the battles between humans and Pokémon as trainers could be seen as a way of waging war, but we know in ancient times the idea of a Pokémon trainer wasn't something all that well known, not even as recent as the times of the Hisui region. Moreover, there is an important aspect of warfare that, while ever present in the real world, is almost totally absent from the world of Pokémon. Guns. And not just guns, but really any sort of artillery-based warfare that goes beyond just basic physical instruments of attack. Guns, bombs, mines, and other such weapons are the bread and butter for combat in almost all cases in modern times, and we have been able to see them develop and advance over time. But in the world of Pokémon, such weapons are hardly ever mentioned, and in the real world where they are, references are almost always limited to the earliest days of the franchise. In that way, it could be said that Pokémon are far more effective weapons of war for some, but the fact that we have nuclear warheads in reality sort of puts that in doubt as an all-encompassing general statement. Even so, it seems that this is indeed the path that has been taken, so in this instance it very much seems that the technology for weapons of war is more advanced in the real world compared to the world of Pokémon, either because it's simply not needed, or possibly because it is too taboo of a topic for any aspect of media about the series to suggest their presence in more recent times.
Space, truly the final frontier for so many, is something that has excited many and driven forward many technological advancements in a variety of fields. And since our understanding of what lies beyond our own planet has had a noble impact on how we live our lives and the technology that is at our disposal, I would say that the advancement in space transportation and science is a worthwhile subject to actually give a look at.
And in truth, as far as it can be told, it doesn't actually seem that a lot is so different between the world of Pokémon and our world. We've sent probes into space to study the reaches beyond what we live within. We've been to the moon, and it seems that basic rocket technology is about on par with real-world technology. While it is true that energy sources are different, with the world of Pokémon being able to use more advanced tech to power their space apparatuses, the rest of it all seems fairly standard for the present day in reality. However, in saying this, it must also be stated that there is one aspect of the Pokémon world that seems to both clash and yet equal the real world, and that is how the world deals with extraterrestrials. Now, in the real world, the idea of aliens not just existing, but already having visited our planet is a topic of great debate among most. Though as far as I'm concerned, after seeing 8 UFOs in many different shapes and sizes in my lifetime, I tend to lean more towards one side of that argument over the other. In the world of Pokémon, however, there really is no debate. Aliens do exist, and we know this because we have a handful of Pokémon that are definitely of extraterrestrial origins, like Deoxys, Kyurem, and Eternatus, just to name a few. For me, I think here the major difference isn't really technology in the way of identification, but more or less how this information is restricted. If aliens have visited Earth, classic conspiracies state that world governments are aware of it and may have records, and while I can't exactly say here that such presumptions are for certain true, it is a bit of a funny note to think about, with the existence of information here as part of the technology not being the focal difference, instead being the actual accessibility of that information through technology.
As a final pit stop on this analysis, it is worth noting that modern technology isn't the only type of technology to be compared here between the world of Pokémon and the real world. There's also the technology that was available to all in the distant past.
There are many legends and rumors of ancient civilizations having advanced technology that is now absent, lost to time, and there have been legitimate cases of this actually occurring, one of the most prominent examples being the Antikythera mechanism. As such, even as many would jest the idea of such ancient technology being present with our ancestors, people need to keep in mind those that came long before us were not stupid, they merely didn't have the same type of technology we do today. The same can be said for the world of Pokémon in this instance, though this latter case is definitely one that is far more extreme. In the world of Pokémon, not only did ancient technology exist that is still not well understood in modern times, but there are even actual species of Pokémon that have ancient origins tied to mankind, and the methods of their creation, like with the members of the Baltoy and Bronzor families, are still a total mystery. While that could make comparing the two easier, since to create actual life forms seemingly from non-living material is something that would trounce any sort of competition, There is still the issue that examples of this in the real world are hard to come by, so exact comparisons are difficult to make. Still, I am willing to give it to the ancient people of the Pokémon world on this one, given that there are even legendary Pokémon like Regigigas that are tied to their existence.
So, with all of this said, where exactly does the world of Pokémon lie in terms of technological disparities that are present in it?
Well, I think it might have been the easy choice to just assume that most of the technology in the world of Pokémon is far beyond what humans are able to do in the real world. Even from this small subset of examples here, it is quite apparent that most of the technological advances that the Pokémon world has against the real world are all focused around Pokémon themselves, as everything else that is not uniquely designed around them is actually very similar to what the real world can offer on its own. While there are clearly greater advances in store for everything involving captured balls, most types of medicines, singular transportation, accessible information on space travel, and creatures that are of extraterrestrial origin, as well as what is otherwise considered to be lost technology from ancient times, for most everything else, the two worlds are at a similar level regarding technological innovation and usage, and the real world even has some advantages over the world of Pokémon when it comes to basic amenities like household appliances and the development of weapons of war. As might be expected, these similarities and even advancement on the part of reality are connected to aspects that are not focused entirely on Pokémon themselves, thus supporting the dichotomy that seems to be present here.
Putting this all together, it becomes apparent that, despite the fantastical creatures that might roam its surface, the world of Pokémon, at least regarding technology, is honestly not all that different from our own, and to me, that just makes perfect sense.
After all, it is apparent that early on, the world of Pokémon was very much designed as if it was a part of the real world, with references to real-world locations and creatures, and this helps to give the otherwise fantastical nature of the games a much more grounded feel. It is fantasy in so much that the world has things in it that we don't have, but at the same time feels like it's relatable enough to make everything seem familiar, and I think that was part of the point in the first place. Adventures in mythical lands are fun and all, but if you can make gameplay experience feel both fun and relatable to kids and adults alike, then it is possible to really bring players into a world and get them to interact with it on a much deeper emotional level than you might be able to do otherwise. The adventure of a trainer is one that is often fraught with great obstacles and events, but at the very least we can see that there is still just as much realism in the games as there is fantasy, and while the real world might not have the same sort of creatures within it, at the very least, it's just enough to make it feel like you really could see Pokémon right outside your front door. And to me, there is honestly no better way to compare the two, and see just how well their shared similarities complement each other, and make the playing experience of any one person feel like an adventure they can join just by taking a few steps right outside their home.
That's it for now, so tune in next time and be ready for the next episode of the V.T.P. Thank you for watching this video. It brings me great joy to be able to speak to you all in the world each and every time we meet like this, to explore the many different facets of both the world of Pokemon as we know it, and the world as we live it, through every adventure we have with Pokemon by our side. If you'd like to, please subscribe, ring the bell and all that jazz, to keep yourself updated on content uploads and other materials of the like. You can also follow me on Twitter if you'd like to know right away when something new is uploaded, and my written works, from which most of this is based on, can be found on DeviantArt. Links to both can be found in the description down below. Remember that the world of Pokemon is a place full of wonder and mystery, and you never know what to expect. So, stay vigilant, keep watch, and always be prepared for the unexpected. Until next time, trainers and friends of all sorts, have a wonderful time.